Do we care? Is a question that ran through my mind while watching The Devil Wears Prada 1 in preparation for the sequel. And I say this not to question the necessity of a sequel, we don't need it, but because I have siblings and friends who've grown up with this movie and hold a deep love for it. And while watching this, I felt a little left out because while I enjoyed it, I did also have a lot of thoughts. For those not in the know, and me up until a week ago, The Devil Wears Prada is a film starring Anne Hathaway and Meryl Streep as the iconic Miranda Priestley. A hard, captivating, shrewd to the point of foresight editor-in-chief of the fictionalized Runway magazine. The story goes that Anne Hathaway's character Andy is a fresh journalism major graduate from Northwestern University who applies to be an assistant for Miranda Priestley, but is woefully ill-equipped for the environment. From the moment she walks through the door, everyone makes it incredibly clear that she doesn't belong. They all make many statements about how frumpy, unstylish, and too fat she is. I don't stand it either, that's just the 2000s apparently. Andy struggles to find her footing but starts to transform herself to succeed in the demanding world of high fashion, and the tension in the film surrounds whether Andy will fully acclimatize to this cruel, harsh, Machiavellian world or retain her morals, pursue her actual writing interest, and find her sense of self again. Think Whiplash, think Wall Street, think The Wolf of Wall Street, just with less crime and violence and more.
Moral.
The Devil Wears Prada is a fun film, and I can understand why so many people enjoy it. It's filled with memorable scenes and performances that are genuinely brilliant, and the way it looks, there is a warmth and intentionality to the lighting, costuming, and set design that transports you, and at its center, it's hard not to be entranced with Meryl Streep. She is dominating every scene with an effortless charisma and terror imbued to anyone who interacts with her. Her glances are annihilating, her soft-toned words land like slashes. She is fully tapped into this difficult person, and it's hard not to fall in love with her. And for a while, even I did. But by the end, I had to sit back and admit to myself that I, and probably many people who didn't grow up with this film, are going to struggle a little bit to enjoy it in the same way so many did in the past. Before I get into why, I want to establish something important that I'm going to say a bunch of times just to make it clear. This is not a bad film. This is a good film. You are perfectly correct for enjoying this film as you do. This film is not unique in the problems it has. You could make the same kind of critique of many of its contemporaries, and at least here, this film is attempting to tackle way more difficult issues than most other films even think of doing. So I do have a general respect for it, but on a level, I also have to get my shit off because this video is holding my Invincible and JJK Season 3 review hostage. But first, to the things the film does well. This is not a vapid film. To the guys out there that can't really connect or see themselves watching something like this, I need you to tap in because those comparisons to Whiplash and The Wolf of Wall Street I made in the beginning weren't just for show. This film takes itself and its industry seriously, and so should everyone watching it. You can see that sincerity and love this film has for fashion most clearly in the cerulean sweater scene, where Miranda dresses down Andy for a snide attitude towards fashion, pointing out that regardless of whether you think fashion is important, someone at the top is making decisions for you and you are dressing according to their designs, whether you know it or not. And it works so well because it quickly establishes that while Miranda is cold and mean, she is not bad at her job. She is effortlessly knowledgeable about style and fashion to an astonishing degree. And I love that. It tells me there is a genuine care in this project, and as someone who doesn't really care about fashion, I mean, you know, from time to time when called upon I can put that shit on, I genuinely enjoy getting a window into a world I'm not normally thinking about. And as a guy, I doubly appreciate because we are far too quick to dismiss the things that women enjoy. Look at the way we talk about romance novels and romantasy as if romantic connection isn't one of the most fundamental things we all search for. So I come to this film willing to take it seriously, but that willingness cuts both ways, because if I'm going to take it seriously when it's doing something right, I have to do the same when it's doing something wrong, and I very much do not like the way this film positions Andy or the judgments it makes about her character. To understand this film, you need to consider when it was made. This is 2006. They are 1 year away from the first iPhone. Social media is in its infant stage. Technology still feels like a place of extraordinary and unlimited possibility, and the culture reflects that. There is an optimism baked into this moment, a genuine belief that the harder you work, the more the world will open up to you, and even with its harsher edges, The Devil Wears Prada cannot escape that optimism. It is in the lighting of the film, the splendor of its fashion, and the pace of its dialogue. And if any character is the fullest expression of that belief taken to its absolute limit, it has to be Miranda Priestley. Now, an uncritical reading of Miranda would lead you to think that she is a cruel, cold, mean-spirited figure who takes quiet pleasure in the consternation of those beneath her. But the film works hard to muddy that message. It is painstaking in its demonstration of her intelligence and equally painstaking in showing that Runway is not merely a job to her. It is her life. It is everything to her. She rides her employees hard, but she demands the same out of herself. The ruthlessness is not pure spite. It is the cost of an uncompromising standard. And what the film is doing pointedly is asking why that standard reads so differently on her than it would on a man. It is there in the opening montage, different women assembling themselves for the working day while their partners lounge in bed. It is there in the line delivered almost as an aside that if Miranda were a man, nobody would remark on anything except how brilliant she is at her job. The film is interested in the attitudes we have about women, ambitious women, working women, and perceived difficult women, and in that sense, Miranda is not just a character. She was doing the heavy lifting of being a rebuttal and aspirational figure and a critique of the moment. She is the refusal of the negative aspirations that many working women receive, and is a person who gets to wield power unquestionably and in a specifically feminine way without having to be humiliated or brought to heel in the arms of a waiting lover as if her career could not be fulfilling in its own right. And Miranda deserves all that nuance. She is someone who made it in a world that doesn't take her seriously and doubly doesn't really respect the work that she does, so she acclimated to that world and became as ruthless as she thought she needed to be in order to survive in it. It would be very difficult to condemn her without first acknowledging what she and many other women are and were going through. All of that is fair, all of that is earned. But here is where the film loses me, because in extending that generosity to Miranda, the film tries to draw a parallel between her and Andy, and in doing so it becomes something that is not just too kind to Miranda, but too dishonest about Andy. It muddles his own message in a way that I cannot overlook, and kind of ruined itself for me. The emotional arc the film is selling is that as Andy grows more skilled and more enamored with the world of runway, she is making trade-offs, that the price of her ascent is the slow erosion of who she actually is. And to be honest with you, I think that's mostly bullshit. I think there is a significant gap between what this film believes is happening to Andy and what is actually happening. And the clearest way to get at this gap is to look at the relationship surrounding her, because that is where I think the film is attempting to do this work but falling into problems of poor construction. When it comes to Andy and her boyfriend and friends, I'm going to be taking up the position that, yeah, no, these guys are crappy people. Usually I miss the nuance and stuff, and I will extend some to them, but I think overall the most fair critique of these dynamics is that, sure, yeah, Andy is flaky and changing and not the best friend or partner, but so is everyone else in her life. The film constantly shows her friends being dismissive and unsupportive of her as she's becoming more enmeshed with her job, and this is more acceptable at the beginning of the film when she doesn't care about fashion. But by the time the blowout argument happens between Lily and Andy, it's incredibly evident that she has fostered a genuine care for high fashion. And I want to look over this interaction between Andy and Lily first, because it is very telling of the judgmental attitude this film has towards Andy.
It's just a guy I know from work.
Yeah, that looked like work.
Look, you're making a big deal.
You know, the Andy I know is madly in love with Nate. He's always 5 minutes early and thinks, oh, Club Monaco is couture. For the last 16 years, I've known everything about that Andy. But this person, this glamazon who skulks around in corners with some random hot fashion guy, I don't get her.
So yeah, this scene has a lot of things to say about the character of these people. It is mentioned here that Lily and Andy have been friends for 16 years. And I'm sorry dog, but you can't hold down your friendship for a year while they're trying to get up in the world? Like, you expect her to just quit her job and do what? Be poor? I know that this film is taking place in 2006 where maybe job security was not as high as a concern, but within this film we do see it matters to some degree. The only scene we have of her father is him giving her rent money so that she doesn't get behind on it. So to some degree, money does matter. And at the beginning of the film, she openly mentions that she'd applied everywhere and it was this job or being a worker at Auto Universe. So I don't know why this is the expectation for her. And when Lily says she doesn't get Andy anymore, I think that's exactly right, because she hasn't tried to. It has been almost a year by this point in the film. It should be abundantly clear that Andy has developed a genuine love for high fashion. So when Lily says the old Andy didn't know the difference between Club Monaco and couture as a negative point, it reveals she hasn't spent any time trying to understand this new Andy, and that she thinks that the change is something to be ashamed of, like the clothes are poison, like caring about them is a character flaw. It would at least be understandable if she was rejecting the abusiveness of Andy's boss and offering commiserations about that, but that's not happening. And I'll even be fair here, you can absolutely be frustrated with Andy for being a flaky friend, that's earned, but I might add that she's literally standing at Lily's art show in this scene. She showed up. After a year of working one of the most demanding jobs imaginable, after a year of Lily being dismissive and unsupportive of something she clearly loves, she is still there. So if after all of that you don't get her, I'm sorry, but that's on you. That's you being a crappy ass friend. Now, when it comes to Nate, I will give him slightly more grace, but he also suffers from the same sanctimonious attitude that Lily does. It is fair for him to be more annoyed by Andy, and it is fair to say that Andy and Christian's relationship is inappropriate. It's very obvious he wants her and she knows that, so not great. But Nate doesn't know any of that, so that doesn't really matter to any of the arguments he makes.
Andy, what the hell is wrong with you?
I didn't have a
choice, okay? Miranda asked me and I couldn't say no.
I know, that's your answer for everything lately. I didn't have a choice. Like this job was forced on you, like you don't make these decisions yourself.
You're mad because I work late all the time and because I missed your birthday party, and I'm sorry.
Come on, what am I for?
You hate runway and Miranda, and you think fashion is stupid. You've made that clear.
Andy, I make port wine reductions all day. I'm not exactly in the Peace Corps. You know, I wouldn't care if you were out there pole dancing all night, as long as you did it with a little integrity. You used to say this was just a job. You used to make fun of the runway girls. What happened? Now you've become one of them.
That's absurd.
That's okay, that's fine. Just own up to it. And then we can stop pretending like we have anything in common anymore.
You don't mean that.
No, I do.
Okay, with this, my problem with Nate here is that he is talking about Andy's lack of integrity, but he's also done a very similar thing. Again, it's been close to a year of her working here, and he still has this incredibly dismissive attitude to something he knows and admits to knowing she has become enamored with. In what world is it easy or make any sense for her to be incredibly forthcoming about her changing attitudes and passion for this work when he has so clearly shown a distaste for it? It would be different in this argument if he was concerned boyfriend trying to drag her out of this abusive work environment because he generally recognizes how she's been victimized in this, but that's not what this is. And the comment about how she always has excuses and it's never her fault is fine for him to say and be annoyed by, but the tone and way in which he comes at it is like he thinks she's doing incredibly frivolous things, as if work could ever be a frivolous endeavor. Like, isn't he a chef? If anyone should be accommodating of the realities of a stressful job, shouldn't it be him? Like, in this film, he is so strangely the most unemployed man ever, just lounging and sulking all day. And if we've learnt anything from The Bear, this doesn't really track, especially in New York City. And the crux of all of this, what makes him so intolerable to me is that he makes it seem like it's a moral failure on her part that she does the normal growing up thing of changing as a person. It's fine if that person doesn't align with what you want, but it's crazy to me that he blows up at her in this instant when she so obviously is having a moment of distress. It's been months, dog. You have been just as untruthful about what you want in a relationship and have expected full-blown honesty when you haven't really given that beyond just sulking and being negative all the time. If a job doesn't align with what you want, you could have just sat down at any point and said that, or broken up, or been a good boyfriend by supporting her through this toxic work environment instead of just shaming her for it the whole time. These statements from him, regardless of how truthful they are, come off like the drug dealer telling the user that they need to get their life together. Like, okay, sure. I don't know if I want to hear this from you though. You know, like, you can be right, but it doesn't mean that you're not a fucking asshole. And that leads to my biggest problem with this film, in that it asks for this incredible amount of integrity from Andy when literally no one else in this film does anything like that or is willing to come up and acknowledge any of their shortcomings. It's like Andy has to be perfect and everyone else gets to complain and say, hey bro, throw away your career for me because fashion is inherently corrupting. Like so many instances in this film, Andy is overtly concerned about her relationships and tries to make them work to her own detriment at times. Like when she skipped out on making connections with journalists for Nate's birthday, something that could have helped her career out immensely, but instead he's just waiting in the dark to sulk at her. The biggest moment where this forced moral stand is applied to Andy is when Emily can no longer go to Paris and Andy is made to feel like it's a betrayal of Emily and a degradation of her morals. But Andy plays no part in Miranda's decision to not bring Emily along. Emily got sick, Emily got hit by a car, Emily started not meeting the insane standards that Miranda demands. None of that has anything to do with Andy. Andy just makes a business decision to not lose her job and self-immolate her professional career in service for somebody who we know would never do the same for her. But the film frames this as Andy becoming a worse person as evidence that she is slipping as the moment she chooses ambition over loyalty, and I think that is a fundamentally dishonest reading of what we have just watched. And the film's ending makes all of this worse rather than better, because what we get is Andy performing this full act of self-flagellation, apologizing to Nate without him once acknowledging his role in their problems, discarding all of her nice clothes like dressing better is inherently synonymous with being vain and corrupt, returning herself to factory settings as proof of her moral recovery, and then we cut to Miranda stepping into a Benz, gliding off into the distance, completely unbothered, completely untouched, while Andy stalks into a crowd of a million. And I think that image tells you everything about why Miranda becomes an inspiration rather than a cautionary tale, because the film accidentally makes the case for her. Andy empties herself out to prove she's good. Miranda doesn't give an inch and retains power. Only one of those positions really looks appealing. And this is doubly made a problem because the film frames all of Andy's supposed moral failures, her compromise, her duplicity as hers, when the responsibility lies squarely on the villain of this film, Miranda. Miranda is a girl boss. While this film plays a little coy with it and doesn't outrightly valorize her, it does make it so that by the end, you can't say someone took the wrong message about life by wanting to be like Miranda after watching this. It is a very optional case. Characters like Tony Soprano, Walter White, and Tommy Shelby are bad dudes, and I'm not saying Miranda is exactly like them. These guys are way worse, criminals who do evil things, but here's the point. If you watch those shows, the framing always makes it clear how bad they actually are. They might revel in the badassery of it all, but ultimately if you aspire to be like them, you are taking the wrong message from those shows. I can't say the same about Miranda. I don't need this film to be overtly negative about her. I'm fine mostly with her portrayal, but I do take severe umbrage with the fact that it gives Miranda a little too much leeway in the end, because Miranda and Andy are not the same. Miranda does what she does out of pride and vanity. Andy does what she does because of wanting to grow up, wanting to meet the challenge, legitimate upward mobility reasons. She never betrays herself. She's kind of a shitty friend, but she never does anything outwardly cruel, malicious, or power-seeking. These are not the same women, and the film treats them like there is some overt connection here. It establishes an idea like Andy is just Miranda decades in the past, which is just categorically unfair to who Andy has shown herself to be. Like, you can say that Miranda is the result of a system that pays patronage to ruthlessness, but that shouldn't absolve the person of the real actions she takes in being who she is. I understand that the film wants there to be a lesson of Miranda being the end point of Andy's journey, but that lets Miranda off a little too much in the comparison and makes it so that for the people watching this, you are expected as the lowest person in the power structure to have to take the most amount of accountability and ethical prowess in the system. It feels manipulative at the end for Miranda to do something so uncharacteristically kind and giving Andy that reference as if by Monday Miranda won't have a new Emily to terrorize, and that part isn't acknowledged. Miranda will still create new converts like Emily and Nigel to lean into the toxic fat-shaming and cruelty-filled environment that she has created. You can maybe say that the lesson is that for her success, Miranda has no real close attachment around her, and I kinda call bullshit on that. We see that Miranda has a relationship with her kids. You can say what you want about her, but she is a present parent. The fact that she was going to travel through the storm to get to their show proves that. And if you want to say that the strain comes out in her romantic relationships, I don't know that. The only lines we see between her and husbands throughout the film, you could easily read him saying, "I knew what everyone in that restaurant was thinking. There he is waiting for her again," as an ego and pride thing to be made to be left waiting on a woman again, and that kind of issue just falters in its seriousness because Miranda is a public, front-facing woman who is constantly critiqued, and he is just some random business executive. And in the climate and culture that is surrounding this film, you know this is right in the middle of the paparazzi ruthless antics with Britney Spears. How seriously am I supposed to take his vanity concerns? And in the relationship she has at work, all of these people are sycophants to the cult of Miranda. Say whatever you want about how hollow these relationships are, but to some degree her and Nigel are friends. All of this leads to it not being surprising that people are more focused on whether Nate and friends are the villains or not, because Miranda's villainy and consequences are completely obscured. Now, I understand this film came at a very specific time. When the people saw Miranda's cruelty, it may have made sense for a minute to reject her worldview, but then what happened? The financial crisis hit everyone like a bad dream, and the naivety of Andy's choice waltzed in. When the recession hit, when the jobs disappeared, when the floor dropped out from under a whole entire generation's optimism, people probably looked around for a model that still made sense, and Miranda was right there. The consequences of that mindset, the hollowness of it, the human cost of it hadn't yet been fully articulated. Elizabeth Holmes hadn't happened yet, the reckoning hadn't come, so the ending of this film where Andy walks away from all of it in a grand moral gesture reads very differently depending on where you're watching it. Seen from inside that 2006 optimism, it is a triumph. Seen from the other side of a recession, it starts to look like a luxury not many people could afford. If they had made a sequel taking place like a year later, it would have just been Andy going back to Runway begging for her job again. So this film's moral instruction reads very dismissive and antagonistic to a generation of people viewing it afterwards. And I want to be clear, I'm not asking this film to have been all-knowing about what was to come. I don't judge it by the world it couldn't have predicted, because I do think media should speak to its moment, even if it doesn't fully reckon with the fact that it doesn't matter whether it's a heel or a dress shoe stomping on you, only that someone is crushing you. I don't fully begrudge it for that. And I don't begrudge anyone who loves this film either, because that would be to disrespect growth and change. We needed to go through the girl boss era to reject it. We as humans need to touch the stove to learn how hot it is. That's why revenge stories don't end when the wizened mentor tells his people that revenge is meaningless. We need to cut our teeth and taste some blood before the message can actually land. The Devil Wears Prada is us learning that lesson. And with all of that, I come back to my question of whether the Devil Wears Prada can exist in 2026, because we are very different people in 2026 than we were in 2006. We do not respect CEOs. They do not have the same type of PR and play that they did back then. And as much fun and as iconic as Miranda is, can she still really work and be as unchallenged as she is in the old film? I think not. Something that really bothered me while watching the trailer for the sequel was that Nigel was still there as a worker for Miranda, and I think that after what she did to him in the first film, I cannot ignore Miranda's cruelty no matter how dazzling she is for what she's done to him. He leaves that film thinking that one day all of his subjugation to Miranda will pay off for him, and seemingly it hasn't. I can't watch this new film, and I think a lot of people won't be able to either if there is no reckoning to who Miranda actually is in some serious light, because if not, then the three paths that this film lays out as options for how to exist in this kind of environment won't really be real options. The first being Andy's path: leave on principle, choose integrity over ambition, trust that something better is waiting on the other side. And in 2026, with the recession sitting one sneeze away from us, prices at historic highs, and a job market that offers less security than any point in recent memory, that path requires a safety net that most people watching this film simply do not have. It is a luxury dressed up as a moral choice. The second is Nigel's path: stay loyal, work hard, trust the system will eventually recognize your value and reward it. We have just watched 20 years of that path play out in real time. He is still there. It doesn't work, which leaves Miranda's path, and I don't think audiences have much appetite for that right now, because they are not watching the film from Miranda's chair. They are watching it from Andy's desk and Emily's desk and Nigel's desk. They are the people the system is being done to, and we can see from films like The Menu, Saltburn, Triangle of Sadness that there is a genuine hunger for accountability for figures like Miranda. People want a reckoning. The question that sequel is going to have to answer, whether it wants to or not, is whether Miranda Priestley can still exist in the same way she did 20 years ago, unchallenged, undimmed, unbothered. I'm not sure she can, and I'm not sure she should. Okay, holy hell, I will give this a second to gather because I just walked out the second movie, and yeah, no, they cooked with this one. They did everything I wanted them to do. They basically made the sequel for me and my complaints about the film and addressed all of the issues I really had. I really like this film. I unabashedly love this film in some respects. It doesn't mean that there aren't problems, it doesn't mean that there aren't falters in its design, but what they do here and what they achieve is great, and I'm actually super down if they decide to make another one of these. Most importantly to me, they addressed Miranda. She had a reckoning in this one. She had to account for some of the toxic behavior she had presented. Now, I will say there was a little bit of an overcorrection in this film. Genuinely seeing Miranda sit in coach on the plane was nasty. It was freaking grotesque. This is one of those things that I will say was too far and not at all what I wanted. I didn't ask for humiliation hour from Miranda. I asked for accountability. For the dudes that might not get it, that scene of seeing Miranda be in coach was like seeing Indiana Jones in the Dial of Destiny or Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi. Why are my goats back as loser bums in this movie? I just didn't need to see any of that. But otherwise, I think it was a deft move to position Miranda in the way that they do in this one. Miranda is made as a figure against the onslaught of unmitigated tech AI CEO trash. A clever move. Make your villain have an even worse villain to combat so they are more empathetic in the comparison. And Miranda stands much more sharply this go around as a figure who digresses from the culturally expected and accepted kind and matronly figures that society demands. Her position as someone who cares about their work, loves it completely, is fully in focus here. Where in the first one I believed that Miranda cared about fashion, I also thought that she cared way more about her own power and control, and in this one it's not like a 360 turn, but I do feel more strongly about Miranda's care for fashion being in the roots of her truly believing that she is the greatest stalwart of that, with the conditionality that she does need other people to push forth that goal. Where in the first one I generally think that she would say that she is the only one necessary for the functioning of the magazine. Now, before you think that this film completely overturns Miranda's character, I want to make it very clear that no, she is still a mean, hard, harsh person, but her edges aren't so sharp. And I don't get the feeling that the film valorizes her worst excesses like the first one did. They answered every one of my wishes and made this film work for this new age. It doesn't mean that this film is completely flawless. If you're someone who wanted a sequel to land as iconically as the first one, blazing a new trail in culture, you're not getting that. This is very much a sequel that is living in the attic of the first one, but it's a very pretty attic. There are so many references to the previous film and structurally it's pretty similar. There is not so much new on the table beyond restructuring itself for this modern audience to make all the money. There's a moment in here where they're showing all these, I assume, famous people, and out of nowhere there's Karl Anthony Towns from the New York Knicks just popping up to say a couple lines, and I was like, they're definitely doing this to keep the boyfriends who did not see or care about the first one awake. I was just like, what is he doing here? He should be out there absolutely torching the 76ers right now. So that was a lot of fun. On the question of Andy, I much appreciate that this film wasn't doing weird moral didactic gymnastics with this one. They don't force me to take some naive, weepy message from her, which is just great. And they just let Andy be a person who deeply cares about other people, even when they don't deserve it, and don't shame her into being an insane bastion of moral integrity. I will say that the boyfriends, they are 2 for 2 on messing these guys up. Look, this guy isn't a douche, but come on, why is he here? In a franchise like The Devil Wears Prada, we don't need this. At most, he should have been like Miranda's husband. Quiet, supportive, and in the background, so much so that I don't even know his name. That's how this should work. Any time spent on him is time I think we could have used to establish these new characters, because these new people aren't it. They have nothing to do, and this is one of those things that holds this film back from being its own thing and not a complete reactionary piece to the issues of 2006. Anyways, Lily is actually a good friend this time around. Nice redemption for her. That's great. Yeah, that's basically it. I was overall pretty pleased with this outing for this film, and I think that anyone who wants to just chill out for a bit, bathe in some nostalgia, and get a story that's functional, you'll have a great time. Anyone who wanted more than that, you're gonna have a terrible time, but who cares about any of that? I was pleased, and that's the most important thing.